Welcome to the Growth Whispers podcast, where everything that Kevin and Brad speak about is related to building enduring great companies. Because in many ways, it's our work, it's our passion, it's what we get excited about, it's what we get our kicks out of. Nothing like seeing a business that goes into the second generation, third generation, or just continues to thrive for a long, long time and build on what it's built. It's kind of fun for us. So that's the podcast. And today is episode 139. That's pretty incredible. It's going to be 3 years coming up pretty soon, Brad. Anyways, good day to you, my friend down in Australia.
Good day to you too.
Did I say that? Did I say that right?
You did not. But you knew that. That's why you asked.
I know. You never know.
You never know.
Awesome. So sometimes we do like a word of a day. So what's your word of the day? What's a word or phrase of the day for you today, Brad?
Well, I was going to say talking about myself in the third person as you just did, because that was entertaining, but I'm not going to do that. I would say cohesive. I would say the word cohesive, thinking about how cohesive teams are so much more effective.
Awesome. Mine is grandiose. I just literally in from a flight from the US like a few minutes ago. I was down in the US, and just every time I'm there and have time to get out and about and see what's happening in cities, just the grand scale of the thinking. And was down by Palm Springs, and that's where they have a couple massive music festivals of Coachella and Stagecoach, which are two massive music festivals, and saw this amazing racing facility called Thermo, which again, massive, big vision that the founder of that organization has. And just, the US, it's a big physical country, but the thinking is even bigger. So grandiose and just big thinking and just making big things happen. So what was your word, Brad? It was cohesive. So, when you have a cohesive team and you have a grandiose vision or strategy, good things happen. And boy, wouldn't that make a good subject for a podcast?
Look, it's possible, but it's also possible that we could move on to the subject for the day.
Yes. Well, that's what the subject of the day relates to. What is more important, the right people or the right strategy? And you could say that your word cohesive could relate to the right people. And you could say that my word grandiose could relate to the right strategy. So cohesive or grandiose, or more specifically, what's more important, really, having the right people in the right team or having the right strategy? That's what we're kind of digging into today.
It is. It's a question that many people may think about. Is it more important to have the right strategy or the right people? Mm-hmm. The strategy people would say, oh, yeah, absolutely, must have a
absolutely
right.
Strategy is very important and very smart and exciting, and yes.
And then the people who, go for culture or people first, they would be saying that the most important thing is getting the right people. So we kind of dig into this today. What's the most important?
We've got the answer. We have the answer. We absolutely know what it is, and that's what we're going to share with you today.
Yeah.
Right, Brad? Or not? That's you know the answer.
Well, we have the questions that may lead the listener to the answer. How's that?
Oh, how beautifully said. Well, and the thing is, like everything, the answer always is to a certain degree that it depends. But we're actually going to press ourselves saying, if we actually had to make a choice to notably prioritize one over the other, are we going to prioritize people? And that, if 80% of our energy was going to go to one and only, a little bit to the other, you obviously can't go to zero. But if we had to prioritize like 80% of the resources going to one or the other, would it be people or strategy? And I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation. And we've had discussions about this in the past. I've had many discussions, and my answer has changed throughout my career, interestingly. And I think initially I was with one. It changed in the middle, and then it came back to where I started. Currently is where my thinking is. But Brad, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, what was the one that you started off with? But seriously, yeah, I mean, you said prioritize. We want to prioritize one or over the other. I mean, the word priority originally, if you go back in time, it was about selecting only one. So
Yeah.
to select one thing, and that's kind of what we're trying to get to here.
Yes.
I think we did an episode recently saying that I think it was like approximately 90% of business strategies fail due to poor execution.
Yeah.
That was from Harvard Business School. And if that's the case, then why are they failing? They might be good. So should we focus on getting a better strategy? Maybe those strategies weren't good enough. Maybe they didn't develop them. Maybe they didn't develop an execution plan that was good. Yeah, it's I think it depends on what you say by strategy. Okay, is what I'm thinking.
Yes.
To like, I want to try to weigh in both sides of the debate, because for some people, strategy is just a set of goals. Okay, that is, we're going to go from $25 million revenue to $40 million revenue in 3 years, for example.
Yeah. But that's a goal. There needs to be some strategy. When we're talking about strategy, is thinking about your core customer and how you solve their problem better or differently in a way that's appealing to them to start with. Like that's that piece of it. And then what else in your business? Basically, there's the consumer piece, there's the structural piece. What is it that gives you a competitive advantage such that you can make good money while you are taking care of the customers that you're trying to help? So yeah, it's not just goals. There needs to be a little more thought and intelligence and positioning in that.
Yeah, so they might think, to take that goals idea a little bit further, they might think, okay, so we're going to open a new state or a new country, or we're going to double the size of our sales force, and that's going to be our strategy. Now, that's the definition. We've made that point.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's go to what the definition of strategy, as you put it, understanding the core customer, understanding their needs, and meeting those needs in an underserved market better than anyone else. The problem is that you can think, if we do that, we will win, and that will be the job done.
Right. And the reality is, like most things in the world, ideas are cheap and easy. Creativity is the easy part of anything. So you have the possibility to win, but then a whole bunch of humans have to do a whole bunch of things right, consistent with that, to actually get the results and win. So the planning and all that's important. The strategy piece is important. But without the human beings to actually get it done, it doesn't matter. It's hypothetical value, not real value. And you need the humans to create the real value.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think about Uber. We know Uber. Uber are an interesting case study because they had a brilliant strategy. There's no doubt that, changing the entire industry where people used to pay cash probably, or pay, a taxi driver, and all of the taxi system, to completely transform that. They meet the needs of the customer better than anyone else. So the Uber strategy was brilliant.
And their execution and the people that executed. I mean, I love Uber, using it just today. Probably had one of the most interesting Uber drivers I've ever had. But the reality is, the strategy is outstanding, and they've obviously had to have amazing people to execute that, to bring it to life, because the idea is good.
Yeah, but there's a bit of a problem in that the culture was toxic. The CEO got fired because there were too many lawsuits that were coming in because of the toxic culture.
There was I read an article recently. There's a bunch of other funny stuff happening. A lot of things. Yet, all that being true, they replaced him, and they're still a spectacular company. Like, they're doing a great job. But go back to your point about the culture, Brad.
Yeah. So That's an example of world-class, best example of strategy. Okay. So we're trying to cater to both sides here. But the problem, if your name was Travis, the CEO who founded the company, he got kicked out because he didn't get the right people because he had toxic A's, didn't get the right people in the company to build the culture that could sustain and manage the growth over time. Now, there's no doubt that they executed. There's no doubt that they changed the industry. There's no doubt that Uber is now, I guess, a verb in itself. The Uber is, you don't go to say, I will go and catch a ride share.
No,
nobody says that. They say, I'll go and catch an Uber. So the success
exactly.
can't be doubted. But Travis,
Well, we could say for sure that I'm sure it's because of people executing like crazy. The people executing that, because they're not the only one that had the strategy. Lyft is out there and lots of others in different countries.
yeah.
And when the people piece got lumpy, they made some changes so they could continue with the strong people to continue to execute and make great things happen.
Yeah.
So, really, if we look at this and I look at an example of a company, a US company that I work with, and coming into COVID, we had 70% A players in the whole company and 90% in A players in the key roles. Like, we were stacking the decks with talent. Like, it was incredibly, incredibly strong team. And the CEO came with us to spend a couple of days with Jim Collins, where he reinforced. Jim said clearly, you can't be a great company with good people. It doesn't work. So we were on the great people train, and their business was really getting impacted by COVID. We weren't sure what to do. And at some point, the CEO arranged a call and said, look, our businesses, 30% of our business disappeared. And there is opportunities everywhere for us. Go find it. Go flip over rocks, look in unconventional places. Just go find the opportunities. And like a bunch of warriors, they ran into the market and found opportunities like incredible. And the business essentially doubled during that time period. Now, they weren't in tourism, so they were in a business that it was possible. If they were in tourism, that may or may not have worked. But the fact is they kind of like released the hounds and they went and found what they needed, and they did incredibly, incredibly well. So this backs up, for me, my vote is people. Early in my career, I alluded to it. I was clear that I always thought it was people that made the difference. And then I started hanging out with some other consultants and stuff, and started thinking that people at strategy, because and strategy are all the smart people. Every consultant wants to be a strategy consultant. But then I realized strategy is good. It needs to be there. And I've swung back to people. That's what most of our conversations are. And an amazing group of people will figure things out. And there's many cases that, you and I know these cases of companies that have had amazing teams, and the business isn't there that they thought. Well, then they go and reinvent something. They create it or pivot it and make it work. And I would just add, amazing people that are aligned. And, that, so if I had to choose, I'll take a group of badass A players any day. Just beasts who want to execute and are amazing at what they do. And together you're going to figure something out. So my stake in the ground on this is people, because they will find the opportunities. They'll find ways to, sort out clients. Even if you don't formally do strategy, the conversations are going to come up. You need to align it and make sure we're focused on the right things. But the, amazing strategy with a mediocre team, unless you've got, a monopoly, then maybe, but otherwise, I'll say it needs to be people first, strategy second.
Yeah, there's a there's a company that I work with here in Australia, and they have a brilliant strategy, like absolutely brilliant, and it will change the industry. And I can't say who it is, obviously, but I can't see how anyone can easily catch them, right? And I think that it's kind of it's a land grab. It's not the real estate industry, but it's a land grab, And I think that once they get there, they're going to be doing really well. The point that I make at the beginning, they weren't surrounded by A players. They had the brilliant strategy, but then when we get in there, the job to be done, we need more highly competent people in the room, like A players. We need to increase the percentage of A players. Some of these people are really, really good, but they weren't good enough to execute this strategy for what that strategy deserved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. I was with another CEO I work with a few months ago, and we're sitting in the room, and he's got a good enough strategy in his business, but we're sitting in the room, a number of years later. He and I are the only two people of the 10. We're the only two that were there in the first meeting that we had 6 or 7 years ago. Everyone else has changed because they weren't able at the level that the company was at to get the job done.
Yeah.
Most of them. Some just wasn't the right place for them. But they just, for what the company needed at the size that it's grown to, and it's substantial now, the people just weren't able to produce. Most. Or didn't want to produce. And the reality is, and now he's got notably better people and the company's growing again. Of course. Because the team just was, if the capability of the team was at a, we'll call it a $500 million level, the company was at a $750 million level. And for a lot of those people, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just about the numbers, it's just about the scale of the business. So yeah, the people make a spectacular difference. And interestingly, a lot of CEOs and executives don't spend a lot of time on strategy or people. They tend to spend a lot of time on the financials.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, but the intelligence comes out when you think through strategy, the lens of strategy. And the intelligent decisions come out when you really spend time thinking through the lens of people. The financials are kind of the outcomes. And I think a lot of people mistakenly look at it backwards. They try to drive the business through the income statement, and it's a scorecard. You got to drive the other two to get a better income statement.
And smart people love playing with strategy. Strategy is play for smart people. They could do it all day.
It's like intellectual. Yeah, I love
Play.
I like it myself.
Yeah.
But I just look at where's the ROI? Where do I see the greatest value add in the companies that I work with?
Yeah.
But strategy is fun.
A good friend of mine, one of the greatest strategy people, certainly that it's come across my path personally, is a guy called Kyan Krippendorf.
Yes, yeah. Kyan's a great guy.
A great guy. And he has one of his strategy pieces is what's the fourth option? And
love it.
And that always makes us ask the question, what is the option that we haven't considered that's out there? So for this conversation, is it people or strategy? I say, what's the fourth option? And that might be execution, because what we really want is the results. What we want is the execution of this strategy. That's, that if there was a third, is it people or strategy or execution? But see, without the right people, without a team of A players.
The right people do their execution.
Yeah, right. Without a team of A players, you're not going to be able to do the strategy justice. Okay, you're not going to be able to execute it to the highest level of its potential. So it kind of circles back to be people. So here's the thing. You could have a high-performing, cohesive team of A players anytime, any market, any geography, and they would figure it out and find a way to win.
Yeah. And they will execute important things that are in sync with the strategy. And as long as the executives are making sure that we execute key things that are about the people, then generally the business gets better and moves ahead. So continually executing and refining the strategy and marching towards the strategy, continually making decisions to build a stronger pool of people who get the right stuff done, and then obviously managing your numbers. But yeah, so what camp are you in? Strategy or people, if you had to choose?
People. You've got to get the right people. Like that's Jim Collins. Step number 1. You've got to get the right people
on the
bus, on the right seat, doing the right things the right way.
Yep.
And I 100% agree with that, because unless you get the right people and you've got that cohesion and they're high performing, everything else stops.
Yeah, you take an amazing opportunity and make something mediocre out of it. I
Yeah.
agree. If you look at most of the time we spend working with CEOs and executives, it's around the people decisions and helping to drive performance. So we're both in the camp that, look, you need strategy. But if you had to pick one and double down on something, it's going to be people, because they're going to figure it out. Business is not rocket science. But if you have a whole bunch of amazing people, it's way easier. And if you have a brilliant strategy, but a whole bunch of people that aren't capable or committed, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Indeed. I think, yeah, I think I'm going to close that off by saying you can't, like you said at the beginning, you can't have a great company with good people. Like,
Nope.
that's just such a simple and succinct way to put it.
And you can't have great results with okay people. Right? And it's fun to work with great people. I love it. There's nothing like working with accomplished, smart, capable people who are driving to get things done and finding ways to win. I mean, it's like, there's nothing like it. So there's the results of the business, and then there's enjoying your work and loving what you're doing.
Yeah. And I suppose it speaks to the job of management and leadership, which is to grow the people around you.
Yep.
Right. You've got to grow them to become better and more effective leaders. All right.
There's a quote I'll share is, the job of a leader is to create more leaders. Right?
Yeah.
That's it. The job of a leader is to create more leaders. Unfortunately, many leaders are so busy working that they don't put enough time into building the leaders. But that is our job. The job of a leader is to create leaders.
Love that.
Awesome. Well, let's close this off, Brad. So thanks for listening, guys. This has been the Growth Whispers podcast with Kevin and Brad. I'm Kevin. He's Brad. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. Brad's in Perth, Australia. You can subscribe in your favorite podcast app. And if you haven't already, please do. Share it with your friends, your team, your colleagues. For the video version, go to youtube.com and just search The Growth Whispers. Brad and I both have newsletters that we put out weekly and lots of content on our sites. We love to share whatever we can. You can also search for back episodes of this podcast. All that stuff is available. Brad is at evolutionpartners.com.au, and I am found at lawrenceandco.com. Hope you have an awesome week, and I hope that you continue to refine your strategy, but potentially consider double downing on the strength of your team.